Hi, I'm glad you could join me in my study. In my study of the doctrine of the atonement, I've surveyed the ransom theory of the Church Fathers, the satisfaction theory of St. Anselm, the penal substitution theory of the Reformers and François Turretin, and the so-called governmental theory of Hugo Grotius. A final theory that I've looked at is the so-called moral influence theory that's usually associated with the medieval logician Peter Abelard. According to this theory, in dying on the cross, Christ simply provided an example to us of tremendous self-giving love and sacrifice. And this in turn kindles in our hearts a love for Him and a love for God that is transformative in our lives. On this view, the cross does not do anything to pay the penalty for our sins or satisfy God's justice or ransom us from sin. Its entire effect is the moral influence that it has upon those who regard it and contemplate it. Now, as I say, this theory is usually associated with Abelard on the basis of a single passage in his commentary on the book of Romans. Abelard writes, "Now it seems to us that we have been justified by the blood of Christ and reconciled to God in this way. Through this unique act of grace manifested to us, He has more fully bound us to Himself by love, with the result that our hearts should be enkindled by such a gift of divine grace, and true charity should not now shrink from enduring anything for Him. Wherefore, our redemption through Christ's suffering is that hoped for deeper affection in us, which not only frees us from slavery to sin, but also wins for us the true liberty of the sons of God, so that we do all things out of love rather than fear. Love to Him who has shown us such grace that no greater can be found, as He Himself asserts, saying, 'Greater love than this no man hath, that a man lay down his life for his friends.'" Now, I think it's obvious that as a complete theory of the atonement, the moral influence view is a complete non-starter. On this view, nothing really happens at the cross. The whole effect of the cross is its influence upon others. So that this theory is completely powerless to explain how persons prior to the time of Christ were saved or had their sins forgiven, since there was no moral influence of the cross upon them at all. The interesting thing, however, is that scholars have come to realize increasingly that this popular image of Abelard is incorrect, and that Abelard did not, in fact, hold to the moral influence theory as his entire theory. Here's what he has to say in his commentary on Romans 4:25. "In two ways he is said to have died for our faults. First, because the faults for which he died were ours, and we committed the sins for which he bore the punishment. Secondly, that by dying he might remove our sins, that is, the punishment of our sins, introducing us into paradise at the price of his own death, and might by the display of such grace that he himself said, 'Greater love no man hath,' draw our minds away from the will to sin, and enkindle in them the highest love of himself." This passage makes it clear that for Abelard, the moral influence of Christ's death was only part of a broader atonement theory that in fact included penal substitution. Yes, Abelard actually anticipated the Reformers in propounding the penal substitutionary view of Christ's atonement. He died for our sins, and therefore his atoning death is efficacious for those who came before Christ as well as those who live after Christ. And seen as part of a comprehensive atonement theory, the moral influence theory is very helpful because it does explain how people are drawn to Christ by his tremendous love and sacrifice for our sins so that we come to follow him and give our lives to God.